It's week 9 and I'm going to talk about scanning photos, slides, and negatives. It's week 9 and scanning of photos, slides, and negatives is something I've been doing for a couple weeks, but it's something I'm still going to be doing, so I want to talk a little bit about what I've learned up to this point. So primarily I'm scanning my own collection. I have some access to some other stuff that I've been scanning as well. So my current flatbed scanner is a Canon 9000F Mark II, for what it matters, but it doesn't because it's out of production. They don't make it anymore. In fact, Canon doesn't seem to make any flatbed scanners that are suitable for photos or negatives or anything like that. They do have a line of scanners which are kind of, I don't know, they're just kind of these generic little things, which is something I bought years ago just for documents, and that's basically all it's good for. So steer clear of any Canon scanners. Look for something that is labeled as a scanner for negatives and photos. So Epson seems to be the only brand that has any consumer things, and price ranges on those $100 up to $1,000. My Canon equivalent, I think, is probably a $200 product, and its capability is exactly what I need for this. It served me well in the first book that I wrote, and it's being very useful now. So I would find something equivalent, same kind of price range out there, $200 to $300, and able to handle high resolution scans. So starting with images. So one thing that we're writing the first book, dealing with a publisher, and they told us that they want every image to be scanned to 300 DPI, DPI meaning dots per inch, so basically how dense is the little scanning resolution. So 300 is suitable for printing. I could probably do less, but that's what they wanted. So then obviously my recommendation, and something I'm doing, is scanning everything at 300 DPI from the get-go. So this way I don't have to try and find the photo or negative or slide again in the future if I choose that one for the final publication. So assume everything that you scan is going to be in the book, so this way if you want to use it, it's suitable for that. And then this is true for people that are making contributions to it, especially if they're remotely and you're not going to be able to do the scanning yourself. Just tell them to make sure to set their scanner to 300 DPI. Also, another key factor is making sure that you save it as a TIFF file or scan it as a TIFF file. I don't know what TIFF stands for, it doesn't really matter, but basically it's an uncompressed scan. That means that there's no internal computer logic that's going to try to shrink the image down to something smaller. And when you do that, you lose some of the clarity. So obviously for publication, they want something that's uncompressed, and the scanner can do that. So just make sure that it's saving to a TIFF file. But I can say that in my previous book experience that sometimes a JPEG is all you have. The people that you're working with, like contributors who say, I have this family photo, we can't find the original, but we have this image, it's a JPEG. That's all you got, that's all you got. And the publisher was more than willing to take that for the couple that we ended up using. Obviously the quality is lower, so it meant that the amount of page space that they took up was rather small, but they were just headshots of individuals, so it didn't really matter that we didn't have something that could be reproduced in a much larger format. So aim for TIFF. If that's all you have, then that's all you have, and then don't worry about I don't know, anything else with it. One suggestion was, we'll just save it as a TIFF file. Well, if it's not in an uncompressed format, and then or it's in a compressed format and then you save it as a quote uncompressed, it doesn't change anything. It still has the same issues. So it's like taking a color photo of a black and white photo. Like, well, I want it in color, and you take a color photo of it and go, it's still black and white. So whatever, don't really bother with that. But that was advice from our previous publisher, and whatever. They got TIFF files even though it didn't really matter. So yeah, once you scan, make sure you put as much information as you can in the title. This will help you when you search for things later. If you have a particular name of a person, and you can type into, I'm using Google Drive, and you can type into Google Drive, like find every person with the last name of Smith, and then it'll pull up every photo document that has that. So So take a little look at my the scanner, and just I'm going to go ahead and scan. I got my first photo here. This is my own personal collection, something that I bought off of eBay. This is a publicity photo from the Cleveland Plain Dealer newspaper. So again, search eBay. They often sell their old collection of these photos, and I was able to find this one of a campus bus service bus on campus. So I'll take a little bit look at the scanning of that. All right, so this is my Canon scanner. Just open up the top, take the image face down. Ultimately, it doesn't matter which corner you put it into, but it does have a little arrow in the one corner saying which side it'll scan from. That's a little tricky there because it kind of has a little bit of a bow to it, but make sure it's flat. And then come on over to the scanning software and hit the scanning button. And all the settings that I have are already in there. So the DPI setting, and that's just going to save it as a TIFF file. And then once the scan is complete, it put it into a folder. I'm just going to drag it into Photoshop. And then here's the scan. So the way I have it set up is it's scanning the entire flatbed. There's a feature that you can have it scan only the visible image that it finds. I find that sometimes it crops it a little bit too close and it kind of loses some of the image. So some of these I just end up going just the full scan because it's something that I can later go in and then just crop it myself. So let's see, rotate it. Oops, wrong direction. There we go. And then just crop it down and kind of orient it a bit. Doesn't really matter how close it is, just close enough for now. And once that's done, enter, and then there's kind of the rough scan of the photo. So nothing else you can do when you're at this stage is doing any touch-ups. Sometimes you'll end up with like little imperfections here, and you can just use the little Photoshop tools and get rid of those. And that's the big key with that is making sure that the glass top of the scanner is clean of any like dust, and that's going to minimize how much is in here. So I would recommend doing some touch-up work, but to be honest, don't get too invested in it because you don't know if this photo is going to make the book. So why invest all the time in something that may not actually make it? So if you finally choose this photo, then you can go ahead and do all the finer work. Another thing you can do for black and white photo is actually change it to a grayscale. And what that does is it greatly reduces the size of the image and just saves less space, in any storage device that you're using. And then once you're happy with it, you can rename it. So the format that I'm using is always start with a year and a dot, and then I don't know the month, so I put 2 X's, and I don't know the date of the image, so this way it'll orient itself with all my other images being in 1974. And I know that this is a 70 series bus at the information booth on campus, or at the Student Center. And since it's out of my collection, I always finish with the collection name. So I use my initials so I can identify the photo later as being mine and not from a different collection of from contributors or from, like, say, Kent State Special Collections, and then go ahead and save it. And done. So the next thing I'm going to scan is a slide. Here, I'm going to zoom in on that, but anyway, so there's the slide, and I'm going to go ahead and scan that. It's a little bit different procedure here. Remove the old photo. I need to remove this back piece from it. And then there's an insert that comes with these photos or photo scanners. And there's one that is for scanning of slides. You kind of just set that in there. And then you just set the slide in there and close it up. Now the setup for this is a little bit different because this is such a small area that you're scanning. A 300 DPI isn't going to cut it. There's a lot less inches in this than there was in the previous photo. So 300 DPI is going to be thousands of DPI because this is several inches, or square inches. This is only 1 inch. So you're going to want to change the DPI. In this particular scanner, I can do, I think it was like 4,500, 4,800, something like that. So I'm going to scan it a lot higher. So the scan will take a little bit longer. You can load 4 in at a time, but I'm only going to do 1 here. And then same thing as before. Hit the magic scan button. And then once that scan is complete, and it does take a lot longer than the photo, because it's just doing a higher DPI, and then import that slide into Photoshop. You can see I put the slide in backwards, but it doesn't matter. You can just flip the slide, oops, wrong way, around, and there we go. And this looks pretty good. Doesn't seem like there's a lot of artifacting or any like dirt smudges or anything like that. So it's a pretty good scan. So same thing, when I'm done, happy with it, save it. And this particular one, I bought this from eBay. They actually put the date on it, so I know exactly when this photo was taken, 1988. And it was in September 9th. And this is unit 6738 on Hilltop Drive. And it's out of my collection, and save. So that's for scanning photos and slides. One thing I didn't mention about slides is that when probably most scanners similar to mine, there's an option to scan a positive film or negative film. So positive film means that, like a slide, it's already been developed to show true colors. We see it. Negative slide means, or negative film means that it's the negative, like you would get, in the old-fashioned cameras that have film. And it's just an internal setting. You do that, and then even though it's a negative, it automatically transfers it to true colors as we see them automatically in the scan. So when you get to the editing process, you don't have to worry about flipping the colors on the image, which is nice. So the cleanup work, how much you want to invest in that, the early stages. If it's glaring, I like to go through and just take it all out. I have the time, I'm sitting there to go ahead and clean all that up. But don't invest too much. If it's kind of a particularly dirty image, or even if you think, I may or may not use this, don't put the time or effort into that. It's something that you can do at a much later time. And also make sure you know the difference between like cleanup and editing of a photo. So you don't want to, it's one thing to get rid of a dust scratch or some imperfection that occurred during the scanning, or maybe there was a little bit of damage to the image they can get rid of, but don't get rid of things that are possibly part of the photo. So don't take out people, or don't take out images, or really, don't edit the photo into something that it's not. And if you have any questions, ask the publisher. That was something, I had a couple questions, like we had a photo that had a staple in it because it had been stapled to a piece of paper. I'm like, can I get rid of that staple? And they're like, oh yeah, go ahead and get rid of that. So we cleared it with them before we did it, because we didn't want it to be considered an editing of the photo versus just cleaning it up, and that was perfectly fine because it was kind of like in the sky. It wasn't like even it was over someone's face. You could easily get rid of it and it wasn't noticeable in the final product, so that was fine. But I will say this caveat: towards the end of the process of photos, this is something we kind of don't count on the editor or the publisher to edit the photos for you. So my first book had low hundreds on the photo, like 100 and say 120 photos, something like that. And I don't think they did any work beyond what we had originally done. And then there was some negatives to that they actually ended up not editing the photos that were appropriate to the type of paper they used. So the final quality was actually pretty miserable in our opinion. So that part was kind of disappointing. So be very clear with them, what are they going to do or not do. And to be honest, once you've made your final selection of photos, spend the time and edit them to the best of your ability before you turn it over to them. They can always do some fine work, but they may not be willing to invest the 15-20 minutes per photo to go in and get rid of every little scratch or imperfection that's there, especially if you have 100 photos. 100 photos times even 10 minutes, it's 1,000 minutes. That's a lot of time, and it could be a lot more than that. So you may be up to you to do that work. So so that's scanning a photo, scanning a slide. That's basically all I have. I didn't really have any negatives on hand. And then just do that and repeat it a lot. I think I probably have 100 behind me, maybe more, with more to go. So just do that, repeat over and over again. And then take it and back it up to a safe spot, backup drive or online storage, something like that, so that you don't run the risk of losing that. So that's kind of my summary of scanning of photos and negatives and such. Only other thing left to scan is documents, and that's something I'll look at maybe even next week. So thanks for watching week 9. On to week 10. Bye now.